History tends to spotlight the same battles over and over. World War I, World War II, Vietnam, maybe the Cold War if you're lucky. But some of the most transformative conflicts in human history aren't in the popular imagination at all. In this video, we will explore 10 forgotten wars that reshaped the world, even if most people today have never heard of them. 10. The War of the Triple Alliance, 1864-1870. The bloodiest conflict in South American history. The War of the Triple Alliance pitted Paraguay against the combined forces of Brazil, Argentina, and Uruguay, a coalition that should have ended the war quickly. Instead, it dragged on for 6 years and became one of the most destructive wars in the Western Hemisphere. Dictator Francisco Solano Lopez led Paraguay into a fight he couldn't win. By the war's end, Paraguay lost over 60% of its total population, and some estimates suggest up to 90% of its adult male population perished. The nation was economically and militarily crippled, losing territory and sovereignty for decades. Globally, the war is almost unknown, but it completely reordered power in South America, elevating Brazil as a dominant regional empire and leaving Paraguay shattered. 9. The Malayan Emergency, 1948-1960. The birthplace of modern counterinsurgency strategy. Following World War II, the British Empire was weakened, but still held key colonies. One of the most profitable was British Malaya, rich in rubber and tin. When communist insurgents began attacking British assets, the British declared an emergency, not a war for insurance reasons. The Communist Party of Malaya, mainly composed of Chinese guerrillas, launched a sustained insurgency. In response, Britain implemented one of the earliest and most successful counterinsurgency campaigns in modern history. Their approach, winning hearts and minds of civilians, isolating guerrillas, and using intelligence-led operations, would later influence U.S. strategy in Vietnam and NATO actions in Afghanistan. Though largely forgotten outside Malaysia and military circles, the Malayan Emergency redefined how colonial powers and modern militaries fight irregular warfare. 8. The First Italo-Ethiopian War, 1895-1896. The African stand against European imperialism. At a time when Europe was slicing Africa into colonial possessions, Italy assumed Ethiopia would be an easy conquest. But Ethiopian Emperor Menelik II had other plans. He had modernized the army, secured weapons from Russia and France, and built a multi-ethnic force numbering over 100,000. In 1896, at the Battle of AWA, Ethiopian troops dealt Italy a crushing defeat. The result was one of the only major victories by an African power against European imperial forces during the entire colonial era. This war delayed Italy's imperial ambitions and protected Ethiopian independence, the only African country to remain free during the scramble for Africa. Adwa became a symbol of resistance for African nations and diasporic black communities worldwide. 7. The Taiping Rebellion, 1850-1864. One of the deadliest wars in human history, almost erased from memory. This wasn't a conventional war between nations. It was a massive Chinese civil war triggered by a failed scholar, Hong Xiuquan, who believed he was the brother of Jesus Christ. His Christian-influenced rebellion sought to overthrow the Qing dynasty and usher in a new heavenly kingdom. At its peak, the Taiping Rebellion controlled large swaths of southeastern China and had a population of over 30 million people. It took over 14 years for the Qing government, with some help from Western powers, to crush the movement. Death tolls are staggering. Estimates range between 20 to 30 million people, making it deadlier than World War I. The social and economic devastation also accelerated internal collapse, leading eventually to the 1911 Revolution and the end of Imperial China. 6. The Crimean War, 1853-1856. The forgotten war that birthed modern warfare, the Crimean War involved Russia against an alliance of Britain, France, the Ottoman Empire, and Sardinia. The causes were complex, nominally over the rights of Christian minorities in the Holy Land, but really about controlling access to warm water ports and containing Russian expansion. While the war itself achieved few strategic gains, it introduced the world to modern military tactics and technologies. Trench warfare, railroads for troop movement, the electric telegraph, and battlefield nursing. popularized by Florence Nightingale, the Lady with the Lamp. 5. The War of Jenkins's Ear, 1739-1748. A war named after body parts fueled by global empire. It sounds absurd, a war triggered by a severed ear. But when British Captain Robert Jenkins presented his pickled ear to Parliament, claiming Spanish forces had mutilated him during a trade dispute, it lit the fuse for war. The War of Jenkins' Ear quickly expanded into a global imperial conflict. Fought across the Caribbean, North America, and South America, it eventually merged into the War of Austrian Succession, involving nearly every major European power. The war may have started over honor and trade rights, but it pushed Britain further toward naval supremacy, setting the stage for colonial dominance in the 18th and 19th centuries. It's a perfect example of how even minor sparks can ignite global transformations. 4. The Polish-Soviet War, 1919-1921. The war that stopped communism from flooding Europe. After the chaos of World War I, new nations were forming and old empires crumbling. Poland, reborn after 123 years of non-existence, was immediately thrust into war with Soviet Russia. Lenin aimed to spread communism westward, using Poland as a gateway to Germany and the rest of Europe. The war's turning point came at the Battle of Warsaw, 1920, also known as the Miracle on the Vistula. Polish forces under Józef Pilsudski launched a daring counterattack that shattered the Soviet advance. Had the Soviets won, Europe might have fallen to communism decades earlier. Instead, the defeat delayed expansion and shaped Soviet strategy for the next generation. 3. The Congo Crisis, 1960-1965. The Cold War's most chaotic proxy war. The Congo Crisis erupted almost immediately after the Democratic Republic of Congo gained independence from Belgium in 1960. Rather than transition to peaceful self-rule, the country fractured violently. Military mutinies, tribal warfare, foreign mercenaries, and Cold War interference all exploded at once. The CIA-backed assassination of Prime Minister Patrice Lumumba, UN military intervention, and the rise of dictator Mobutu Sese Seko turned Congo into a Cold War battlefield. The crisis was a warning of what would come across post-colonial Africa, the intersection of resource exploitation, foreign meddling, and fragile institutions. 2. The Greco-Persian Wars, 499-449 BCE, the ancient fight that saved democracy. When the mighty Persian Empire launched invasions against the fragmented Greek city-states, it seemed like democracy would be crushed before it ever matured. Instead, the Greeks held the line, with legendary battles like Marathon, Thermopylae, and Salamis, eventually repelling Persian forces. Athens and Sparta united briefly, and the resulting cultural confidence led to the Golden Age of Athens. Philosophy, art, science, and politics flourished. This war didn't just decide who controlled the Aegean. It preserved democratic ideals, ensuring that Greek thought, and not Persian autocracy, would become the foundation of Western civilization. 1. The 30 Years' War, 1618-1648. The war that gave us the modern world order. Often called the First Modern War, the 30 Years' War was an epic conflict of religion, politics, and power. What started as a Catholic-Protestant struggle in the Holy Roman Empire soon expanded to include France, Spain, Sweden, and others, becoming one of the most destructive conflicts in European history. Entire towns vanished. Famine, plague, and genocide followed armies across the continent. In some German regions, over 50% of the population died. But out of this carnage came something new: the Peace of Westphalia, 1648. It introduced the concept of nation-state sovereignty, territorial integrity, and diplomatic equality, the very foundations of modern international law and the United Nations Charter today. Conclusion: the wars we remember often say more about us than about the wars themselves. But memory is not the same as significance. These 10 wars, neglected in popular culture and history books, have all had world-altering consequences. They shifted borders, reshaped ideologies, and introduced strategies and systems that continue to shape our politics, militaries, and cultures today. By rediscovering them, We don't just honor the forgotten. We learn how history truly works, not through the obvious, but through the overlooked.